Oh, let me do this.
Happy Monday, everybody. We're here with Radney Foster. He's got a great show coming up at the Franklin Theater on Friday, March 24th, kicking it off. It's his only local show. We were just chatting before we started. How's it going this morning?
Really well. I'm off to see some old friends after this, and spent yesterday in the studio with my sons, uh, making some music, and that was a lot of fun. So,
So the music never stops. You're always creating.
yeah, the music or screenwriting or writing. I'm working on another book of short fiction right now,
Oh,
so uh, I'm always doing something that involves writing of some kind, some ilk.
yeah. Just to give people a little bit of background, you're a singer, songwriter. You've written so many songs for a lot of artists that people love. Keith Urban, Brooks and Dunn, Kenny Loggins. You've kind of covered the gamut. But your show you're bringing to Franklin is about your debut album, which
Yeah.
came out 30 years ago. I can't
30
believe
years
it.
ago, we put out Del Rio, Texas, 1959, and it had a big impact both critically and commercially for me. And it's by far and away, most of my fans' favorite record. It's the one they discover you with, and that's not uncommon that really gets to be somebody's favorite. Um, and so, in honoring that anniversary, we are doing a tour that is the Del Rio tour, and it's we're playing that record from top to bottom as the first 10 songs. So you hear the album. Essentially, you hear us play live the album the same way that it was stacked, back in the day. And then we add a bunch of other songs, that things like "Raining on Sunday" that I wrote that Keith Urban re-recorded, and people things that were hits, for other people or for Foster and Lloyd, and it's a really fun show.
Yeah. Tell us about coming up on 30 years. I mean, first off, are like you're in shock. You can't believe it's
Yeah,
been
I don't know
30
where it
years.
happened. It is a little bit shocking, but um, but it also it makes you reflective. It's kind of there is a kind of nice aspect to that. It makes me think about what I've been able to accomplish. What you know, you kind of go back over the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you realize it's like, well, I'm still here. I'm still making music, and that's a hugely fortunate thing. That not everybody gets to do that for 30 or 40 years. And I have been able to, and it's awesome. It feels neat.
So, as your debut album, tell us about the creation of this, how this came about.
Well, I had been in a band, Foster and Lloyd, and we went our separate ways. And for 2 years, I was really in kind of in limbo um, with the people over at RCA Records, and therefore my publishing company. And I went out on the road for 2 years, opening for Mary Chapin Carpenter and Vince Gill with just me and my acoustic guitar.
Wow.
And those 2 years, I wrote a ton of stuff, um, and then I played a showcase at the Bluebird Cafe, and Tim Dubois from Arista Records was there with a couple of guys who worked for him, and he walked into the kitchen and he said, "You're going to get a lot of offers. I just want to be the first one, you know,
Wow.
in line." And it was in the kitchen of the Bluebird. I said, "Tim, I don't want to work for anybody else. I know what you're doing over at Arista, and I want to be part of that." And so we shook on it, and it became a really neat relationship. And I would I brought in Steve Fishel, who is a great pedal steel player and was just starting as a record producer. He'd been out with Emmylou Harris for a decade, over a decade, as her steel player, uh, and it was just a really good collaborative effort on his and my part. And I would go into it very old fashioned. I would go into Tim Dubois' desk at the end of the week every week, and I'd play him, two or three new songs, and and he would say, this one, that one, no, and said, you can't. we're not going to let you go in and cut until you have that magical thing called a first single for a baby artist. Even though been in a really pretty famous band, people it's your soul. It's you still have to treat it like you've never done this and nobody knows who you are. And I said, okay, I get it. And when I finally walked in and I played him "Just Call Me Lonesome," he stood on his desk and said, "That's it. Don't screw it up." and we went in, and it was the first single, and it was a big hit.
Yeah, you speaking of singles, you had how many? 4 singles from that debut album that made in the top 40.
Yeah.
One went to number 2. That's pretty incredible for a debut album.
Actually, Nobody Wins went to number 1. It's just that Billboard has consumed all the other charts, and so it doesn't get the credit because basically they own the history. So yes, it was a number 2 record but number 1 in a couple of other charts. So
wow.
But yeah, it was pretty auspicious, debut, and it it just set the bar for me because it was filled some with things that that I knew would have a shot at being played on country radio, that were, and it was more traditional than what we had done in Foster and Lloyd. But then, there were a lot of songs that I knew were never going to have anything to do with that, but that were just great storytelling, great story songs. And I've always loved those and always wanted to write those. And so I think that mix made the album itself sort of take a little more depth, a little more meaning to people.
Yeah, I think that's why so many people like 90s music, because it seems to be more storytelling. Or the 90s
absolutely.
I
hanging around with Guy Clark and Rodney Crowell, will make you write something. You're going to try to write something to impress those guys, and you better bring it. And that was sort of the best thing that could happen to me because, and hanging out with Mary Chapin Carpenter and Vince Gill and I knew I needed to have songs that really had some depth to them if I wanted anything to happen ever again for me. And so I felt like that was really a part of the making of it, was just trying to satisfy not only my own heart in the matter, but my peers and my mentors were these people who really wrote great songs, and so you wanted to up the ante.
That's some pretty interesting company, or big company that you were in. Vince Gill, and then he's a great songwriter himself.
Oh, phenomenal.
Unbelievable. Well, it's been 30 years, 1992. Tell me what you think about this whole popularity of 90s music, 90s country coming back and being more popular.
I think part of it was the traditionalism that was going on at the time, but also I think the storytelling. I think you're right about that. There's a lot of there's also there's a bunch of young artists who are out there in their 30s whose first impression of country music was in the 90s, riding in their parents' car or truck or their grandparents', kitchen, and that holds a lot of nostalgia for them, and their thought process is, man, if I could just do that. That's what got me here. That's what made me want to, really dig into country music, was those songs. And so some of them you're seeing younger artists go back and cover those songs, Hint, hint, anybody,
like, I got a whole great album.
I'm here, go right ahead. But then also to write in that sort of vein, it's kind of neat.
Yeah. And you yourself have inspired a lot of country artists. I mean, Darius Rucker says you inspired him to work on a country album.
He's a very kind man, and but he was a big Foster and Lloyd fan, And then this record is one of his favorite records of all time, and it just really, you know, inspired him to want to make a country record, and which I'm completely flattered by. And he's a marvelous performer, and God gave him a thunderbolt for a voice, and he's a really good songwriter too. So
pretty amazing. All right, we just checked. There's only a handful of tickets left, as you said, for next Friday, March 24th, Franklin Theater.
Yeah, you better get them quick, because they're going to
Better get them quick. I mean, it's such a interesting show to see. I love to see these. I'm glad that you're playing the album all the way through, because sometimes when you see artists that you haven't seen in a while and they have an album like this that is so, that people remember in their career, sometimes they play one or two songs and then you're like, oh, I wish they'd really played this or that. But I love that you decided to do the whole album.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I have great players with me. It's an acoustic trio. Eddie Heinzelman's on guitar, and Tammy Rogers is playing fiddle and mandolin, and they both sing phenomenal harmonies. So it's going to be a really exciting night.
All right, and then we have to mention again, it's your only hometown show.
It's my only hometown show.
You're on the road. We're not going to see you for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, hey, thanks again for joining us this morning. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely, it's just joy.